We just got back from a seminar in Phoenix, which was delightful. And we got to meet a number of you that we hadn't met before, which was really a lot of fun. And of course, we got to spend a lot of time with many of you that we had met before. We're going to deal with or respond to a number of questions that had previously been sent in, and I'm going to encourage you, of course, to send me your questions ahead of time, because those are the ones that we'll get to first. Donna will try to highlight for me some of the questions that we do get live, but we'll get to those that were sent to me ahead of time. So please send me your questions ahead of time to greg@reallove.com. I received one last week where the woman that sent the question said this: I spoke to my sister who lives in Australia, which is as far from our mother as it is possible to get and still be on the planet, about all of this, about real love, and she expressed concern that I was getting involved in some kind of what she called idealistic structure, as I've done in the past, for the sake of getting a feeling of belonging. Normally, I would have felt gutted by that kind of remark, well-intentioned as it was. This time I admitted that I had done that many times, and it's all looking for the love I did not get. Is real love different from other systems and structures? I don't see it as an ideology. Love is the foundation, and truth is hand in hand. Real love simply seems to be what works and has been proven out over time. I can see by the results, even in myself so far, that it works. I'm not even sure what an idealistic structure is. I usually think of real love as a set of principles. I don't have to do something in order to belong in real love. Is that different from an ideology? I'm also not sure what she means by systems and or structures. In the first place, you did a really nice job of responding to your sister without becoming defensive, and in saying that, as far as you're concerned, it was just something that worked. Your sister was, and I'm sure you sensed some of it, but attempting to undermine you and criticize you and attack you, even though it was somewhat subtle. People do like to use terms where only they know what they mean, because it puts people on the defensive, confuses them, it sets them back on their heels and puts them in charge of the conversation, which is why she uses terms like idealistic structures or systems. Those are terms that really have no standard meaning, and so she can use it in whatever way she wants. And it really has no purpose here. I mean, who knows, what does that mean? It's like the phrase, like the term ideology. Well, anything that involves a concept is an ideology. So really, everything is an ideology. Any economy, any economic system is an ideology. Any religion is an ideology. Real love is an ideology. Any set of principles is. So sure, it is. And that's really not the point. So when she says, is this, what's her term? Is this an idealistic structure? Well, it is a structure of ideas, but you said that she was well-meaning. Well, not really. From what you said, look what you described. She put herself as far as possible on the planet from your mother. She's a runner. She demonstrated in her conversation with you that she's also an attacker. She also didn't ask you more about real love. Instead, she immediately cast doubts upon what you already have demonstrated is important to you. So she's casting confusion, she's attacking you, she's doubting you. It really was not well-intentioned. I mean, it was nice of you to say so, but she's criticizing and attacking you, which is apparently a culture from which you come in your family, so you're kind of used to it. She's just plain skeptical. She's skeptical of any system that would espouse unconditional love, and it's understandable that she would be. I'm not criticizing that she would be skeptical or critical. And she's skeptical because she herself is unhappy. And my guess is probably has been unhappy from the time that she was a child. She was raised, after all, in the same household you were. And she doubts that genuine happiness can even be achieved. And why wouldn't she doubt that? She's never found it. She probably doesn't know any people who are genuinely happy. So she looks at you and you're saying, you know, I think I've found something where true happiness can be found. And she's saying, no way. Certainly no way. You couldn't. Certainly my sister couldn't have found it. I would have to have found it first. She's probably an older sister, would be my guess, from the way that you're talking about her. And so she's got to criticize you. It can't be you that finds it first. It would have to be her. She sounds like she's probably the more intellectual sister, too. So she's got to cast aspersions on what you've found. And she has to doubt it because, you know, not only she's never experienced, she's never seen it anywhere else. So of course she's skeptical. And what she's really expressing concern about is that she's concerned that you're in a cult. She's afraid that there are some people who are somehow taking advantage of you. And as soon as somebody goes from nowhere, you know, experiencing the same old stuff in their lives, to suddenly saying, I've found something, it is astonishing how many people around them suddenly come up with the, you must be involved in a cult syndrome. I hear this stuff all the time. As soon as somebody joins a religion where they're happy, as soon as somebody becomes a member of a group where they're happy, oh, it must be a cult. Well, you know, look at the characteristics of a cult. Cults attempt to keep people in. They make people become members. Well, real love doesn't attempt to keep people in nothing. They don't even require that you become a member in anything. Cults are secretive. They tend not to share the innermost secrets of what they do. I can't think of any secrets that we keep in real love. If I can, well, of course, I wouldn't share them with you. But there aren't any. And they tend to keep people who are non-initiates out. Well, there's no such thing in real love. And cults tend to take from you what you have. Well, you know, that's what your sister's worried about. And you could reassure her about all that, but of course she would still be skeptical that such a thing as unconditional love would exist. The best response is to do what you did, which is to say, it's a system of values and principles that shows people a way to find unconditional love, to share unconditional love, and to be happy. And all I can tell you is, I'm happier. Then you demonstrate to her with your life, with how you live it, that you're happier. Well, what else is there? Sometimes people even ask me, is real love, are you telling me that real love is the way? I find it a silly question. I tell them that your question didn't even make sense to me. All I can tell you is it works. And if people do it consistently, if they apply the principles consistently, it works all the time. So try it or don't. But if you don't, that's up to you. I'm not going to push you, ever. I'll offer it to you if you want, but if you don't want, I won't even keep offering it to you. So that's what she's all concerned and in a kind of a bit of a snit about. But you really did a nice job of initially handling that and not getting all excited. Here's somebody who says, I'm struggling in dealing with my stepchildren. I know that they're drowning and they're only doing the best they can in the 5+ years that their father and I have been married, I've taken their behaviors personally. I've struggled a lot with this because when I've done anything that my stepchildren have not liked, they complain to their mom. And then she calls and berates my husband. And then he, in turn, is angry with me. As I'm growing in real love, I know that I need to be as full as I can, especially before my interactions with them. But I've noticed that most of the time, they don't even need to do anything for me to become irritated. Just them breathing and walking through the door puts me on edge, and pins and needles. I'm sure that this has more to do with me than it does with them, but I don't know what to do. Well, from what you're saying here, the thing that needs to change isn't so much how to interact with them, it's you. If you're on pins and needles and you're irritated in dealing with them, you may for a while need to interact with them less and spend more time interacting with people who can unconditionally love you. In other words, I'm not talking about move to another planet, but spend less time interacting with them where it's not necessary. So, in other words, if it has anything to do with changing their behavior, if it has anything to do with discipline, if it has anything to do with talking to them that's not absolutely required, don't. Because if you're irritated at them, as you described here, they don't need to do anything for me to become irritated. Wow. Then you probably ought to work at interacting with them less and getting filled up by other adults to the point where you can talk about them, for example, without feeling stressed, where you can feel more loving toward them. Because if you speak to them and you're the slightest bit irritated, of course they're speaking to other people about you. They can feel that you don't like them. And every word you say will come across as an I don't love you. So you need to work on you a lot more before you work on them. I'd work on talking to loving people about yourself a whole lot before I worked on working with the stepkids. Here's a woman who says, my daughter Kimberly begged and pleaded for a bunny. Jeff and I finally caved in and got her a bunny. Now she comes home crying that she doesn't think the bunny is cute. I'm only laughing because, on the whole, in the first place, this is just almost a parental general guideline. Never get your child a pet. You think I'm kidding? Unless you've got children who are already fairly far along on the road of learning how to be responsible, pets cause nothing but problems. I mean it. And I'm not saying don't ever get your children a pet. What I'm saying is, unless your children are already fairly far along learning responsibility, pets will add to the stress of your family and will make things much more difficult. So if you're begging for more problems in your family, if you want additional problems with responsibility, if you want more whining and crying in your family, if you want more complaining and more excuses, buy a pet. You're guaranteed to get more. And it's only because pets require constant care, and you're going to see it. The problems come up constantly. So they get a pet. The daughter comes home crying that she doesn't think the bunny is cute enough. This is because her friend got a lop-eared bunny, and Kimberly's bunny is just a plain old white one, not a lop-eared bunny. So she says that she's jealous and wants a different bunny. Kimberly claims that she didn't have enough bunnies to choose from, and that her friend got a prettier bunny. I just can't stand it. This is too funny for words. I don't know how to handle this situation. I told her that I could find a home for the bunny. Oh, that would be a Okay, hang on, let's get to the end of the question. And she said, don't do it. So what then would be the most loving approach to take? I want the bunny to be well taken care of and to also love my daughter. So remember the first rule, don't get a pet unless your child's already responsible. I would suggest, now there are lots of ways to handle this, but once the child has gotten with a pet, the natural consequences are that the child must take care of the pet. Absolutely must take care of the pet. So, for example, in our whole household, the kid's got a dog. Well, great. Once you get the dog, then you got to take care of the dog. And there were a couple of occasions where kids didn't take care of the dog area, for example, and they got to sleep outside with the dogs because they didn't take care of the dog area. They got to sleep outside all night with the dogs, which they didn't find all that fun. But then they remembered to take care of the dogs better. Don't get rid of the bunny. I mean, this offer to get rid of the bunny, are you kidding me? I mean, then what the child learns is, well, then I can ask for anything I want to. I can make any decision I want to. And if it doesn't work out, well, then what's going to happen? Let's see. Mom's going to come down and save me. And what is the kid going to learn about the rest of her life? I can do anything I want, and if it doesn't work out, well, then somebody's going to come down and rescue me. And it doesn't work like that. You really have to live with the consequences of your choices. So you might sit down and tell her a story. You might say, I once got a bunny. This is you speaking. And the bunny's name was Kimberly, which of course is your daughter's name, coincidentally. And you might say, now, what if I had started looking around and said, Kimberly's ears aren't shaped quite as nicely as the ears of some of the other bunnies. And then, of course, you might slip up as you're telling the story as some of the other children. I don't think she's as cute as some of the other children, and I'm not sure I want to keep her. I wonder if I should just give her away. And then ask Kimberly what she thinks of that story. It doesn't work like that. With our children either. It's not like once we decide to have a child and we decide that our children's ears aren't quite right, or our children are disobedient, or our children's hair isn't like we want it, or our children have a messy room, or our children don't take care of their bunnies, for example, we don't get to take them back to the pet store or to the hospital. And neither do the children who decide they're going to have a bunny. You make your choice, you live with your choices. So the bunny here is an opportunity for you to learn to love and take care of your daughter, just like the bunny is an opportunity for your daughter to learn to love and take care of the bunny. And that's what she needs to learn to do. Pretty much all of her life, once she's making a choice, there's always going to be a cuter choice. There always will be. As soon as she buys a car, there will be a cuter choice. As soon as she buys a computer, there will be a cuter computer that comes out. As soon as she gets a cell phone, there's going to be a newer model cell phone come out. And you need to use these examples and tell her, when you get a cell phone someday, she may have one. When a new model comes out, which is usually the case in like a week, we're not going to let you take the cell phone back because a cuter model or a better color comes out. No, you have to live with the choice that you make. And if you make that choice, you can be entirely delighted with the choice you have, especially with a living thing. The idea isn't that the bunny is going to love you or be cute for you. The bunny is an opportunity for you to learn to love and take care of the bunny. And you can learn to do that whether the bunny has lop ears or not. This is a great chance for your daughter to learn something. Here's somebody who says, Greg, you said difficult experiences teach us how to love. I'm really touched by it. For the most part, I know you're right. Can you talk more on that? In my current situation, what will help me more to be loving while I'm in the middle of difficult times? What would it look like? I know you talked about this before. I'd appreciate it if you talked about it again. You're going to have to give me some specifics, kid. I can talk in generalities forever, but if you give me something specific to talk about, it'd be way more helpful. I mean, this can apply to everything from somebody yelling at you and learning to love them while they're being unkind, to anything else. I mean, you don't really learn very much. You know, you're talking about loving during difficult experiences. Being nice to somebody and loving them when they're saying nice things to you is pretty easy. That's like nothing. But learning to love somebody when they're being unkind to you, that's a real growth experience. So, I mean, that's one example that I can give you. But you're going to have to give me some additional ones if you want more helpful information. Here's somebody who says, I'm a single mother with 2 children, 15, boy, and 10, girl. I'm just learning about real love and have some questions. First question. My 15-year-old calls his sister names all the time, and then she gets mad and starts calling him names, or she comes crying into me. So how do I get them to stop the name calling and fighting? Well, for one thing, the goal isn't to stop them. That's the goal that you saw all your life, which helped nothing. In fact, I'm sure you were raised by parents who told you when you were unkind or when you were fighting, stop it, and that led you to have the skills you have now, which isn't helpful to your children. That's the first thing parents say when they see their children fighting, stop it, and nobody wins. Nobody learns anything. So you don't want to, it's like the wrong question. How do I get them to stop the name calling and fighting? You don't. That's not it. What you want to do is love them and teach them. And have faith that loving them and teaching them will lead to their being happier. And as they are happier, they will quit it. And they will. But your real goal is to love them and teach them, and everything else follows from that. So what you would do is, on a completely separate occasion, apart from the fighting, when we wait until they're fighting, you're pretty much too late, although we'll get to that in a second, what you do when they're actually fighting. Help me remember if I don't, but when they're not fighting, you say to the 15-year-old, you say, you know, I've screwed up and made more occasions with you as a mother than I can begin to count. You'll have his complete attention right then. So you're saying to him, Fred, we'll call him Fred. Fred, you know, as a mother, I have screwed up and made more mistakes with you than I can count. I mean, I've been unkind to you. I've criticized you. I've yelled at you about cleaning your room. If you can't come up with a list of 10 specific ways in which you have been unkind and unloving to him, then you're lying to yourself. You should be able to come up with 10 like that, without even thinking. So you sit down with him and you describe some ways you've been unloving to him, specifically some ways in which you have been unkind and made him feel bad about himself, in the ways that you have spoken to him. And, you know, like maybe even like implied that he was less than competent, ways that you've criticized him as a person, especially if you can think of some like names that you called him, like stupid or like clumsy or that kind of thing. If you can't think of ways that you actually said stupid, when he's made mistakes, you can certainly think of times when you have, for example, rolled your eyes and made that terrible sound, that sighing where you've gone, where you've done that, or because you need to say to him, when you've made those sounds and when you sighed and rolled your eyes, you You need to work with him. You need to say, so when I've done that, what have you heard me saying with my behavior? And you need to work with him until he can say to you that he's heard you saying that he was stupid. You need to help him till he's free enough to say that. Then you need to say, so all these times that I've been unkind, this may take 10, 15 minutes, it may take longer. So in all these times that I've been unkind to you and criticized you and told you that you were stupid, how did you feel? Did you like it? Well, obviously, he's going to say he didn't. He's going to say that he hated it. Did you feel loved? Did you feel happy? In fact, you're going to get him to the point where he's going to say in some fashion, I really hated it when you treated me like that and communicated those messages to me. And then you're going to come in because now you've got him completely trapped. Then you're going to say, and that's exactly how your sister feels when you treat her like that. And so, all I'm suggesting is that you remember that when you treat her as I've taught you to treat her, as I've treated you. That's it. You're done. You don't say stop it. I mean, that's so stupid. It's like when a child spills milk on the table and we say don't do that, as though the child were so incredibly dumb that the kid wouldn't figure out that the glass belonged in the milk instead the milk belonged in the glass instead of all over the table. Of course the child understands that. And you're just going to be saying to your son, your sister feels as bad when you treat her that way as you have felt when I've treated you that way. The kid knows the rest of it, that it would be better if he didn't do that. He gets it. You don't have to deliver the punchline. Then what you do is in family meetings, you talk about every single time he treats her unkindly. You talk about every time she treats him unkindly. That's what family meetings are for, and you have family meetings every day. You read a little bit of the parenting book. You talk about, in family meetings, every instance in the family where there's an unkind or unloving act. And see, as you bring these up, as you talk about these incidents of being unloving, children identify them and you point out, did you feel happy or not? And eventually they begin to get it. But if you don't teach them, if you don't show them that the consequence of being unloving is unhappy, where did you expect they were going to learn this? This is how we teach it. And when they hear it often enough, really, eventually, they learn it. You're the one who's going to teach it to them. And I'm here to tell you that eventually the behavior starts to slow down and vanishes. Now, that's the ongoing teaching. What do you do in the moment when he's being unkind and he's yelling at her? You come in the room. You don't have to say stop it. You stand at the door. You simply look at him. Most of the time, you don't need to say anything. You look at him and smile. Now, why is that enough? Because he already knows the truth. He already knows what's right. He already remembers all the lessons you taught him. And you're standing there and being loving is what makes the difference. That's it. You standing there and being an example of loving is usually enough to end the argument. You're thinking, no. Yes. How do I know? I've seen it hundreds of times. If that's not enough, you might say, you're not looking very happy. If that's not enough, you might say, so would you rather be happier than this? And then you sit down with them and you talk about how they might handle this situation differently. But you don't ever have to say, stop it. It is stunning how brilliant our children can become and how quickly they can work things out when we simply love them and set an example for them. But we don't trust them. We treat them like idiots and we come in and beat them with whips and chains and then they don't learn anything. And it's mostly because we treat them stupidly. Here's a lady who says, my 15-year-old son invited some friends over after I went to bed. This is the same woman. So she's in bed. He invites some friends over. They sneak in the house. And he gets drunk with them. Then in the morning, she finds beer cans all over the floor, along with sleeping kids. My first response was to get really angry and start yelling. I felt like beating them all with a wooden spoon. What is a loving way to handle something like this? What's a good consequence? How do I handle this with the other kids and their parents? Can I stop this from happening again? Notice the question. Notice the question again is, how do I stop this from happening again? Which is, of course, the entire reason that the kid is acting like this. It's the same reason that the kid is yelling at his sister. He feels controlled. He feels like his mother's always going, how do I stop you? How do I stop you? How do I change you? You are not acceptable. In other words, what you're telling your kid is, I don't love you. I don't love you. Would you quit being who you are? I would like it if you would be another human being. He feels all this. Like you said, your first response was to get really angry and start yelling. Yeah. And he feels the anger. And I'll bet he feels it a lot. Now, what he did was clearly wrong and stupid and inconsiderate and selfish and thoughtless and all that, and irresponsible and everything. But being angry is just more I don't love you to him, and he's going to feel more empty and afraid, and now he's going to be more likely to do it again, not less likely. So there's an immediate response to this and a long-term response. So let's do the immediate response, just so we can get to the long-term response. Immediate response would be to wake up all the kids in the house that don't belong there, and to wake up your kid, the 15-year-old, but wake them up not angrily, just get them up. So that it's a natural consequence of being in your house. It's time to get up. You got to have the party and drink the beer, and now you get to wake up, along with everybody else in the house, because it's time to. And you tell them it's time to go home. And you tell them that you'll be contacting each of their parents so that they know. But before they leave, you ask them to clean up the house, because that's a consequence of their behavior. If they refuse to clean up the house, not a problem. But you need to tell them ahead of time. You may choose to clean up the house, in which case that will be reported to your parents when I speak to them. Or you may choose to refuse to clean up the house, in which case that will also be reported to your parents. By the way, if you choose to refuse to clean up the house, I will also, and now this is up to you whether you choose to do this, but I'm also choosing whether I want to call the police, because you're drinking underage. So, you can choose to handle it however you want to. But you don't raise your voice, you don't get excited. I've just discovered in my experience of working with my own children and their underage friends many years ago, and in dealing with other parents and their kids, that when children are told that we might be calling the police, they clean up the house faster. It's just a small technique. So you get the house all cleaned up, then you call all the parents of the kids who are involved. You get their phone numbers while they're there. And if they say you can't have my phone number, you go, again, as I said, I will be getting your name and phone number. So you can either get it to me, or you can refuse to give it to me, in which case we call the police, and then they will come and pick you up. So you call the parents, and you don't lecture anybody. You simply say, I'm Mrs. Jones. I'm the mother of, Fred Jones, your son's name. And I just called to let you know that my son Fred apparently invited your daughter Julie over to the house, and they were drinking beer, and I found them in my house asleep this morning, and I was just calling to inform you of that in case it was something you didn't know. That's it. You don't deliver a lecture. You don't do any teaching. You don't tell a parent you ought to nothing, because parents become unbelievably defensive when you tell them how they ought to raise their kids. Oh my goodness. No, you just say, I just thought that was something that you maybe didn't know. And if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to call me, and you're done. This takes, 60 seconds. And as you're making all these calls, your son is sitting there next to you. And then you say, if you have any questions of my son, he's here. He'd be glad to talk to you. But he participates in all of it. What we do is our children make these inconvenient choices, and then we clean up after them. We clean up the house. Wrong. He cleans up the entire house. You don't pick up anything. You don't pick up one can. You don't clean up one mess. He cleans up the house. Then we make the phone calls. Now, he should be right there. He should dial the phone, and then you'll speak to the parents. He's involved in everything. Then, long-term solutions. Then you talk to your 15-year-old son about why he's drinking. The reason he's drinking is because of you. You explain to him, there's only one reason people drink alcohol. It's a drug. It depresses the nervous system. It dulls people's minds, and they drink because they're in pain. And the only reason you would be in pain is because your life is miserable because of, me. So you take responsibility for that. You take responsibility for the fact that you have contributed significantly to the lack of love in his life. Well, gosh, he's not going to fight you about that, how does he? You're not lecturing him about alcohol. You're explaining to him why he drinks. Then you explain to him, of course, drinking alcohol at your age is really dangerous. If you get caught drinking alcohol outside of this house, that can end up to you being put in jail. If you do get put in jail, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that I won't come and bail you out. They'll put you in jail, and they'll call me and they'll say, can you come bail your son out? And I'll say, no, because that was a choice. If he drank, then he was choosing to stay in jail, and so I won't bail him out because I know he wouldn't want me to. He'll love to hear that. And then you talk more about that in family meetings. Why people drink, the consequences of drinking, how it affects people, and then periodically, every few weeks, you ask him, you talk to him about whether he's still drinking, showing no evidence that you have judgment about it at all. You need to say to him, I'm not going to criticize you if you are. I'm simply available so that it's something that you can talk about, since I'm pretty much responsible for the fact that you feel like you need to. So it's not, how do I get my son to stop? No, it's how do I create a loving environment in my home so that my son won't need to. See how different this is from how people usually do this? And this way works. Whereas the parents who say, I'm going to reach in there and I'm going to stop my son from drinking, really? Well, good luck with that. Those people lead themselves right into the battle from hell for a lifetime. Jill says, my husband, for example, is being very critical while we talk. Nothing I say is right. He blames me for all the faults. How do I control myself not to feel irritated? Because once I show my irritation, things go very badly, and he starts yelling or stops talking for days, even weeks. Okay, I know what you're talking about, that your husband does this. So your husband is a really empty, frightened, childish acting little man who has, and I'm not making this statement like without some information. I know something about this woman's husband. So he goes into rages, storms, and fumes and fusses and stomps out of the house. And so when he criticizes and blames you for everything, then what you do is, when he says, you're at fault for everything, you say, oh, I make so many mistakes. I mean, you're right. And then you specifically name some things that you have done that have been inconsiderate and thoughtful. So you see, when he says, it's your fault everything is your fault. You don't have to take responsibility for everything. What you do then is you say, gosh, you're so right, and then you name the things you're responsible for. So when he says, you're responsible for everything, the whole wide world, name the 3 things you are responsible for, or at least 3 of the things. What he's looking for is to be listened to. Obviously, the man feels very alone. So name them. He needs to be heard. And it's not enough just to nod your head. You have to be specific and take responsibility for that stuff. I mean, he really does act in an immature way. And if you become irritated, then he feels like you're not listening to anything at all. And now your conversation is dead. So it's really important that you show him that you're listening to him, which in his case is about all the love he can stand. He really does push you and everybody else away. He doesn't just push you away. He's a very lonely man. He's not loving to anybody else either, to your daughters or anybody else on the planet. So listen to him, and listen to him specifically. Here's a question that was emailed to me. With time and applying the real love principles to my life, I feel a happiness and peacefulness that's beginning to be somewhat steady. But it's different from the happiness and peacefulness that I would sometimes get when I was always on the field of death where I was using imitation love. Yeah, I would hope so. Today I see love as giving others the freedom to make their own choices and for them to live with the consequences of their own choices. I realize this is the only way for them to learn and grow for themselves. In no longer having to save them, to be right or controlling for them to learn in order for them to love me. That didn't entirely make sense. But so I feel like I have $20 million in the bank. However, in recent discussions with people in the real love community, it's been drawn out of me that I realize that I'm not connecting with people, and that in my current space, I think I don't need their love to fill my bucket. Most importantly is that I can't even tell you what their love feels like, because I don't really feel anything. I don't feel the effects that I would get with imitation love. I trade with you and you trade back, so I like you and need you in my life. When I share the truth with them, or they can help me see more truths, I'm grateful for them seeing me and accepting me, but I can't tell you that it's love, or that I feel, or that I feel what I once knew. So I ask myself this question: could I live my life without their unconditional acceptance and love? Yes. However, it would then become impossible for me to tell the truth about myself, because there would be no one to see me and accept me. There would be no one to help me see more of my truths. My growth in real love would stop, and I would likely begin to fall. However, I would never stop living by the principles. But I'm confused about what love really is. I thought I knew what it was when I was on the field of death, but that was just imitation love. Today, I actually feel that I don't need the imitation love. I can do without that. I can love them, but they do not need to love me back or make me happy. But still, so what he's confused about is, how do I connect with people, and what is the feeling of real love? How do I feel the unconditional love that is given by the real love community instead of just understanding it? Maybe I stay away from this connection for a safety reason, but I'm blind to whatever it is. I guess you could say I'm okay with just being a hermit on the field of life, but I know there has to be more. Right now I can't just see it or feel it. Nah, you're feeling it. See, the confusion is this. We keep wanting to have explosions of real love like we were having with imitation love. Pay attention to me. In imitation love, there were explosions of falling in love, explosions of sex, explosions of pleasure, of power, there were big highs. Whereas with real love, it's a much more gradual building of peace and contentment. Look at your description. I no longer have to save people. I no longer have to be right or controlling them. You've written week after week that you feel more free. The way of life that I'm living is freeing. I feel like I have $20 million in the bank. Are you getting this? These are feelings. These are feelings of real power. Feel like I have $20 million in the bank? Remember how frustrating it used to be that you had to reach out and control everything everybody said all of the time when you were living with imitation love? People would say things and you'd reach out and you'd have to modify what they had to say all the time. Remember how you had to control your wife and your son all the time? Remember how it was just controlling? You had to jump in and make your little contribution in conversations? Remember how frantic and frenetic and agitated and fearful a feeling that was? And now you're losing that. In fact, you've lost a lot of that. And you're saying you don't get a feeling out of that? I'm teasing you now. What I'm saying is, you do have a feeling out of that. And part of real love is an absence of fear. That's huge. Part of it is an absence of anger, an absence of agitation, an absence of a need to control, an absence of compulsions. But it's also the presence of peace, contentment, a presence of a real concern for the happiness of others. And the more you do this, the more you'll go from just an absence of fear and anger to the presence of a genuine concern over the welfare of other people. You'll go more from the negative to now just the neutral, absence of negative, and more toward a positive, genuine, active concern for other people. So what I'm suggesting is you're having a lot more of a feeling than you realized. It's just not, you just don't go from the explosions of imitation love to the explosions of real love. It's an entirely different kind of thing. It's like going from playing the bass drum to playing the piccolo. It's really quite a different kind of experience. Still a powerful one. Here's a question from my son. Inga says, Patrick, who, as I remember, is in his teens, as I recall. I have a friend who has really mean parents, verbally abusive, but yet he's very optimistic and fun to be around, and not in a show-off way. How can he still be so nice? You know, I'd have to know more about him, but he has seen unconditional love somewhere. If you ask him if he has had unconditionally loving grandparents, an uncle, something. I've known a number of people who have had really unkind parents and still been nice, but now here's the rest of it, Patrick, and that is what you call nice may not be loving. So I've known a whole lot of people who have been raised by really unkind parents who are described by everybody around them as incredibly nice. And what they are is incredibly anxious to earn the approval of the people around them. And they're not really happy. So if he was raised, let's say that he doesn't have an unconditionally loving person in his life, and he's raised around mean parents, some really nice people, all they are is really eager to please. And so they appear to be really nice, and that's because everywhere they go, they're like, okay, what can I do to make this person happy? What can I do to make that person happy? And every place they go, they spend their every waking moment, and this is something Patrick can be looking for. This is much more, this is something you can't ask a friend. This is something he'd have to look for in his friend. Is his friend always eager to please? Does he tend to say yes to whatever? Does he tend to say, oh yes, I'd be glad to do that for you? Does he tend to agree with people? I mean, I was talking to a lady just this past weekend who has spent her entire life being thought by every single person around her as the nicest person they know. Just like Patrick's friend. Everybody says, oh, she is the nicest person. And now here she is in her 50s. And even though she has been thought of as being nice, she's miserable and alone. Because all of her life she has purchased everybody else's conditional love by doing everything that everybody wants and agreeing with them. And it's all a sham. It's all a lie. She has really never been herself. So Patrick, just the fact that he's nice, as in sweet, out, doesn't mean a single thing. Not a thing. You have no idea whether he's happy on the inside. The drunk driver thing, is it in little patches?
No, it's just he's a victim about being victimized.
So a year ago, a man says, a year ago I was a victim of a drunk driver, and what a death scare I had. Then it continues, is that right?
No, it's just scary. It's not, it doesn't make no big deal. It's
Okay.
everyone's
Let's see. Let's see. You know, see, there's a girl that works at this convenience store that I used to work with. Now, I'm not normally afraid to ask anyone out, but we've been friends for a while as I come by there and we talk, but I'm afraid of her turning me down, and I just don't think it'll be the same anymore, and I'd certainly hate to mess that up. She works at the convenience store that I used to work with. Oh, so you'd hate to mess it up by asking her out. Oh gosh, if you ever have any doubts about messing up a relationship, I mean, get to know them. Tell a bit of the truth about yourself. And as you get to know them a little bit more, you got nothing to lose. Everything about dating is about gathering information. So ask her out. You can't lose with dating. Dating is about gathering information. So go for it. Everybody's so afraid in dating. Well, but if I ask her out, I hate to mess up our relationship. All you're doing is gathering information. And if you go out or you gather more information and it turns out that it was not the relationship that you thought, well, then now you know it's not the relationship you thought. What do you have to lose except your illusion? And so it turns out that what we're afraid of losing is our illusions. It's almost like we prefer to live in our dreams. So go for it, kiddo. Gee whiz, have fun. Gather all the information you can. Tell her all about yourself that you can, not all at once, a little bit at a time. Read the Real Love and Dating book and they'll tell you about how to handle that. Here's a man who was trying to eliminate some accumulated debt, and he began to sell some things on consignment. At a consignment store, he purchased a DVD from a person on Amazon, and then he developed a relationship where she agreed to sell some stuff for him on Amazon because of her 5-star, 100% rated Amazon 500% Amazon rating. And she made an agreement with him and said, sent an email to him agreeing that she would sell a bunch of DVDs and so on for him. And so she went on and on about her qualifications, about how honest she was, and in fact, she kind of went really overboard. She said, "I'd like to point out to you as strangers that I do not lie or cheat or steal, ever. My grandfather, the 20-year retired New York Police Department sergeant and longtime president of the Westchester County New York Police Benevolent Society, has helped my divorced mom to raise me upright and still watches over me today. Anyway, he used to say to me, and it's true, if you can lie, you can steal. If you can steal, you can kill. And who would know better than one of the last of the incorruptible good cops, hero and protector to many, my Grandpa Will." So this is all before she even suggested that he send her some DVDs. When somebody goes to enormous lengths with stories of grandfather police department chairman and all that to tell you that they're honest, it's like the old Shakespeare quote, "Methinks thou dost protest too much." It's like, if somebody has to tell you that much that they're honest, they're probably not. And so this man sent her a whole bunch of DVDs to sell without a contract and so on, and she never got back to him. And so he lost all the DVDs and is now concerned about pursuing her legally. What do you do in a case like this when a business thing goes bad in real love terms? In real love terms, can you be kind, for example, and loving and still sue somebody? Absolutely. You just don't get angry. You don't have a fuss. You don't kick doors in. But if there's enough money involved that it's worth pursuing it legally, then you do. You hire an attorney, and if you actually know where this woman is, then you send her a notice that if she doesn't follow through with the money or the DVDs, that you'll have her pursued legally, and see to it, for one thing, that 5-star Amazon rating is eliminated. But you pursue her legally until you get some sort of resolution in this business transaction. It's business. You're not talking about a marriage here until things are righted. Where it goes bad is when you get all wrapped up and you allow your happiness to be destroyed. But in business, you establish a contract. Even though it wasn't signed, you established a verbal contract and a contract in writing where she said she'd do a thing and she didn't. You established an expectation, you established a promise, and she has to fulfill it. So I would definitely pursue her by legal means and not allow my happiness to become wrapped up in it. So we look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. It's been just thrilling to have you here. And please send me your questions to greg@reallove.com, and we look forward to seeing you in a week. Love you all.